Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Niels Warnaar, and I work for BlueCrux. And together with my co-host, Marina Ketelslegers from Numlix, we'll be hosting this webinar today. This is our second webinar on connected finance and supply chain. If you have not been with us for the first webinar of this series, no worries. We will share the link to the recording after this webinar. Now, before we get going, I'd like to point out that in your console, you have a section that says questions. So if you have any questions during the webinar, you can type those questions in there and we'll try and answer as many of those questions as possible at the end of the webinar. If we can't answer all of your questions, then we'll follow up with you offline. So as I mentioned, this is part 2 of our webinar series. During our first webinar, we talked about the challenges to connect finance and supply chain. We also talked about how you connect the different plans in the organization, and we gave you a sneak peek of what that can look like in Anaplan. And today we will build off of that sneak peek, and we'll give you a much deeper insight in how this can all work in Anaplan. But before we go into that, first a very quick recap on webinar 1 so that we're all on the same page, and we'll also introduce BlueCrux and Numlix to you. So last time we showed you this and we reflected back on the financial crisis of 2009, and where we could clearly see that the leaders broke away in terms of earnings while their peers stayed flat. And of course, the question is, what did these companies that were able to break away after the financial crisis do differently? Why were they able to accelerate through the turn, so through this financial crisis? Gartner interviewed these companies, and it became clear that what they did differently is that they were able to bring the functions and plans that existed across the organization in sync. And that's why we're here today, to talk about how do you bring supply chain and finance in sync. And the last slide that I wanted to share with you on the recap of webinar 1 talks a little bit about what are those things that you can start doing to bring supply chain and finance in sync. So if you're interested in the details behind this, then we'll share with you the link to the video of webinar 1. But just in short, so what is important? It's important that supply chain and finance start speaking the same language. And we talked about defining the right building blocks together. And we used the example of the product hierarchy. And so what you typically see is that supply chain has a way of looking at the product hierarchy, finance has a way of looking at the product hierarchy, but you need to come together and build that one product hierarchy to really start bringing supply chain and finance in sync. Some other thing that we talked about was synchronizing calendars. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the events need to be synchronized, but it is good to start having visibility to the different processes and planning meetings in supply chain and in finance, and we'll demonstrate that as well in our Anaplan demo today. But that you're also starting to synchronize your decision-making process. Now, if you've been able to do this, just being able to speak the same language, get visibility to each other's calendars, work together on defining those building blocks of how you look at your data, how you look at your processes, that's when you can get into end-to-end scenario management. And we spoke about the example of creating demand supply scenarios, being able to financialize those to really have a discussion between supply chain and finance. And of course, the reason why we're here today is to show you how you can do that on one platform with one data set in Anaplan. Now, before we deep dive into Anaplan, first, very quickly on who we are. And I'll start off with BlueCrux, and then I'll hand it over to Marina to talk about Numlix. So BlueCrux is a consultancy company. We are specialized in supply chain and operations. We have approximately 100 consultants working for BlueCrux. BlueCrux started out in Belgium. We have 2 offices, one close to Mechelen and one close to Aalst. And last year we opened our first office in the US, in New Jersey. We cover what we call the end-to-end supply chain, and our expertise is mostly in large transformation projects where we would cover process redesign, operating model, systems, and people. And this is where I hand it over to my co-host Marina to talk about Numlix and to take you into our Anaplan demo.
Thank you very much, Niels. My name is Marina Ketelslegers. I'm a business consultant of Numlix. Let me do just a quick introduction of my team. We at Numlix, we see as our mission is actually freeing up your FP&A teams from frustration of planning in Excel spreadsheets and support you in digital transformation, going from those flat FP&A to connected FP&A. Numlix has been founded by Ufinity, known brand on finance HR market in Belgium, and our mother company is Kronos Group. Kronos Group is delivering IT services already for about 30 years in Belgium. And our partnership with Blue Crooks is something very naturally bringing together supply chain and FP&A expertise, and also our skills and Anaplan together to connected planning. That's what we think really enables Anaplan customers to unlock more value and bring their finance and supply chain in sync. So today it's showtime. Today it's Anaplan Show Lab, and we are basically going to focus on our case study company, which has been quite struggling with connecting finance and supply chain, bringing them in sync. So we will see how this company, sports goods retailer, with global presence, how this company has been able to turn things quickly around with connected planning and eventually in the end bring their finance and supply chain in sync. Also to add here, they were not really starting from scratch in this company. They did have planning process in finance and in supply chain already. So their first challenge was actually to align their calendars, align data input points, and align also decision-making points. So let's see how it looks now in Anaplan for them. So if we just switch directly to Anaplan, so you can see there is a calendar, and both teams, supply chain and FP&A, would have access to Anaplan, and they can follow monthly, quarterly, and yearly planning events depending on their role, of course. Our case study company does monthly cycle of integrated business planning, which means that they have 5 meetings monthly, at least 5 meetings. Yeah, so product review, demand review, supply review, integrated reconciliation. This is something which is more like finance reconciliation, financialization sometimes it's called as well. And the management business review. This is the place where we go to management to say this is our new forecast, and it contains these risks and opportunities, and we discuss them all and see how we can cover them. So this is a very high level last meeting. So this is something what is happening monthly now in this company. So, and basically we're now we can just look at the June part. Yeah, so June, let me go to June back. So we are in June, right? So this month is something where we are starting. So this is where I can also look into more details of those events. What I can do here, I can see what is assigned to me, for example, which steps are assigned to me. If it's a meeting event, yeah, then it would be then linked to Teams, Microsoft Teams. I can join from here. If it is like a data submission, I will be able to go to this data and review it before, or input the data if I need to submit it. So, and then if it is approval, then I will be able to approve, right? Can change the date, can also see how we're doing, how we're completing our tasks on time, not on time, right? So for example, I see now this meeting, a supply review meeting. Maybe it's a good idea just to change this responsible here to Niels. That's our demand and S&OP manager, so that he would be able just to go and then see this is assigned to him. And then maybe what I also will do, I will create a new event. So if for some reason I have decided I need an explicit point of approval for my demand planning process, a demand plan, I would say I commit to demand plan. So it will be a new event I'm creating. So I want to do it monthly, and I would probably make it an approval type. I will put Niels as responsible. I will submit. So after I do that, I need to have a look and see, okay, what will be my first date when I do that? And then in June, I would choose, let's say, deadline is today, right? So that's how it usually happens. So this deadline is today. So I do see this line now popping up. So commitment to demand plan. So Niels would probably need to review and approve some data, right? So I will help him with this a little bit. I will show him where he needs to go to do that, so that he would probably then be able to click on this link. So the other thing I would do, I would just say, let's remind Niels that he has a deadline today. But I would start probably with saying, hope you had a great vacation. Sorry, but your deadline is today. So I can send this directly to him. He will be able to click on the link from the email as well, right? He knows what the deadline is. It's all specified here, and what he needs to do, he knows. And just as a next step, I'm switching over to Niels so that he would probably say a little bit about his vacation and know what he's going to do about this deadline today. So I hope he will be able to show this to you. All right, so I'm changing to Niels. Hey, Niels.
Hello. Hi, Marina. Thank you. I had a great vacation. Thanks for asking. I come back and I see that I have this deadline that I need to be working on. So similar to what Marina just showed you, I'm looking at the calendar overview. I just refreshed my dashboard, and now I see that there is an action, committed demand plan, an approval meeting or a format that I'm responsible for. So I'll take on the role of demand and S&OP manager, and of course those roles might differ depending on your company, but in this case we're talking about the demand and S&OP manager. As Marina explained, I can use the go-to link, and let me switch to full screen as well so it's easier for you to see. And that immediately takes me into the demand review. So this demand review dashboard is something that we would typically use for a monthly process. And we can also use this to commit our final demand scenario. So what do we see here? We see our forecast. So we see a rolling forecast. What we can easily see here as well is our initial demand plan, so that what we have agreed on in the previous meetings. We can look at the statistical forecast. We could look at a demand planner forecast. You could put any number of forecasts in here to, in that meeting, have a discussion on where do we see deviations, what do these, or how do we explain these deviations. What you see here on the right side is also a widget for us to compare our current plan with the previous S&OP cycle. What you see here is already that there's an opportunity in there of 100,000 units, because what we can do in this dashboard is we can add risks and opportunities. And what you'll see is if I switch between the months, so now I'm looking at January 18, but we would be looking at April 18, you can see that that plan immediately changes, as in we have not logged any risks or opportunities in April. But we have in May. So there's a risk in May that we've logged during one of our previous meetings. So this is a very easy way as a team to collaborate around the different months and to have a full view for the coming year or 18 months or 24 months, however many months you want to look at as a team. So what you can see here, as I mentioned, is there's already some risks and opportunities mentioned. What I didn't mention or share already is that I am, as a demand planner, responsible for our drivers product. But what you can do here up top is switch between any products or bring it up to a higher level if you need to. But for today, we're going to look at drivers. Now, what do we want to do? As a team, we've identified that there is an additional risk that we see, and we want to add that risk into our demand plan. Now, due to a new impact of the coronavirus, we foresee that in the month of May, we will have a a risk to our demand plan that we want to model and see what the impact of that is. So what I can do is I can say, okay, I'm going to add a new risk, COVID-19 impact. I could say May. We're in our demand review, so that's where I'll add this, this risk. You will see it popping up here. I could add details. I'm not going to do that now, but I could type in the text. We're saying that this is for our drivers. So I'm going to look up the drivers. And we know, because these are discussions that we've had with sales, so we're adding that this has been entered by sales. We know that there is a risk of 400,000 units in the month of May. So you can add a specific day, you can put it on the beginning of the month. It doesn't really matter as we're looking at a monthly overview, but if you would be looking at a more detailed view on a weekly level, for example, a specific date might be very important to you. So what do we then see? Here we have our standard scenarios. So we have our initial consensus demand plan. So without any of the risks or opportunities added, we have a scenario where we look at all of the risks and opportunities, one with high and medium ones, or only high risks and opportunities. And as we've just added a new risk, we would want to, for example, add that to the scenario of all risks and opportunities. What do we then see? If we scroll down on our dashboard, we can see then month by month what the impact is of all of those risks and opportunities for the different scenarios. So right now we're looking at all risks and opportunities as scenario. But for example, if I would only want to look at the high and medium risk opportunities, we can click there on the scenario and we would immediately see which risks and opportunities are linked to that specific scenario. Now, we are talking about units here. We've added our risks and opportunities in units, but what we also do in this view is that we financialize that. So we bring that back to a revenue in dollars. We even have a view on COGS and on margin. And again, based on where you are as a company, you can come up with all kinds of ways to show this in this view. But in this case, we're financializing that to dollars, but you might also financialize this to any other type of currency. What I could do as well is I've added a risk. I could also add a scenario. So I could say I would only want to look at the impact of COVID-19. So I could say I want to add that scenario. It pops up here. I could say, okay, the COVID-19 impact is what I would want to see. I also make sure that it's visible here. Quickly refresh the dashboard. So now it pops up here. And if I've selected COVID-19 as a scenario, then I would immediately see the impact that we see from a risk point of view that has been documented by sales. And then what we can also easily do is we have all those scenarios next to each other, and we could go month by month, and we could immediately see the impact on our demand plan in units, in dollars, in COGS, in margin, and we can easily switch between the months to see where all of those, or how all of those scenarios look like from an impact point of view. During that meeting as well, we can go through our meeting checklist. We can check off the standard steps that we take during that meeting. We might want to add actions that we want to follow up on. So I've added a couple here where you see, you can add priorities, you can give it a due date, and you can even have an email going out to somebody. But as we said, the deadline today was to commit a demand scenario. So in our case, we could say, okay, we're going for the all risks and opportunities. We want to commit that scenario. And then by running that, we would be able to commit that scenario. I've done that already as we're going to the supply review next. But this would be a way for us to then bring that to our supply review. If I then go back full screen to our calendar overview, so where we started, I could say, okay, I've committed the demand plan, so I can approve that. So that's visible to everyone. And what I wanted to demonstrate as well is Marina just showed you how to create a new event, but of course you might not want everyone in your company to create new events. So, for example, if I haven't been set up to create a new event, and I want a quarterly event, and I won't fill this out for now, but if I try to submit that, you see that that it failed to create that new event. So that way you can set up restrictions for all of your users. Okay, so we've committed our demand plan. Now it's time for the supply review. So similar as I just did, I'm using the link to go directly to the supply review. We're looking at our demand plan that we've previously committed. Of course, there's a different view in the supply review. We're much more interested in inventory levels. We're much more interested in our finished good inventory in terms of dollars. But similar to what we've seen in the demand review, there's an opportunity here to add risks and opportunities and to collaborate against those, around those. I've already added one to not go through that motion again. But what we could say, there's a capacity shortage. Again, might be due to COVID-19, might be a factory in China, for example. We've added a risk of 500,000 units for the month of March. And I said, okay, include this in the plan. And if we then go down, a similar view as we had in the demand review, but in this case, we're much more interested, of course, in capacity utilization, plant production, projected inventory. Again, we financialize this, so we talk about inventory in dollars. But of course, what's striking here is that we have capacity utilization issues. And so as we've added for the month of March, risk of 500,000 units, we see we go way over capacity. We see that we actually go over capacity in some other months as well. So this is, of course, something that we as a team would like to discuss. Now, what have we done for this customer? We've created a visual view of the capacity plan. So month by month, we can see what is our max production capacity, what do we need to produce to be able to fulfill all demand, and we see where we go over capacity. Now, in this case, and again, you can create different scenarios, but the view that we've created here is easily look at, okay, what would this cost us in terms of dollars when we would, for example, allow pre-build, which I think is what most companies would typically look at. So we could say, okay, allow pre-build. Anaplan immediately then calculates which months can I do my pre-build. So that's what you see here in green. And it would also immediately give you a view on how much would that cost in dollars. Now, okay, so $273,000 if we would pre-build, a lot of money, but how does that compare to, for example, overtime? And so we say, okay, we're going to allow overtime, we're going to put in extra shifts. We could see that that would cost us close to $500,000. Or maybe as a company, you have the option to go for contract manufacturing. We would see that for this product, again, we're looking at drivers. It might be a very different view if we look at other products, but that contract manufacturing is really expensive, and that would cost us over $1 million US. So simplified discussion, of course, you can go much more into detail, but for the sake of time, we're going to say, okay, we're going to go for pre-build. That is the cheapest option, looking at it from this angle. And similar to the demand review, what we could do here is we could give this scenario a name, a description. We could create that supply scenario, and then we would be able to use that in our S&OP process. But of course, we could create a lot of scenarios that we would want to bring to the S&OP meeting. All right, so then I go back to the calendar overview. Now I'm going to hand it over to Marina, and Marina is going to show you how she goes through the quarterly CapEx meeting. So let me share or change presenters. Marina?
Yes, Niels. Yes, I think I'm now in. So indeed, I go back myself to the calendar, and I see that there is a planning event assigned to me, and I'm expected to go through CapEx projects pipeline, updated quarterly, and I see wow, I think I need to do that. Yeah, so it's already all overdue. So I need to go to then the link as well. I will be going into the specific page of Anaplan. So I want to look at basically calculation for all periods. I do see that it's not approved, right? So I still need to approve it. I also noticed that the CAPEX projects pipeline bottom line summed up is a little bit lower than the CAPEX target. So it says to me I might want maybe to accelerate some projects because now I have still a little bit of room for that. So I do look at the projects I have. What do I have here? I have launch of a new product called Driver Super Pro. So I do have also other projects which are more like supply chain extension projects, renovation, acquisition of subsidiary, and I can also see different financial metrics here. I can switch them on and off to make it less busy for me. For example, I won't look at revenue, would only be gross margin, or I would be just looking at the revenue, EBITDA, and capital allocation. So the possibilities here are just to choose what you need. So of course I need then to look at the project pipeline themselves. I see again those financials popping up. I do see some additional information, for example, than which scenario has been chosen as the recommended scenario. I also see that there is a project on hold, so shopping facility built. So it's not a bad project. I might want to switch it on, so I can put this off hold, and I can see that first it has been added to my totals, of course, so I'm closer, a little bit more closer to target, and I'm also now seeing this on my graph as well, which is what I wanted. So now I can go even more into details. All right, so the detailed part of it is something what, of course, it's about assumptions, right? So you have different assumptions here, and this is demand plan units, for example, then price. I also have R&D cost as an assumption, and I, for example, if I would like to change it, so let me change this specific price setting directly here to increase it. You can see that my scenario has been recalculated. I also don't like that everybody would be, for example, just changing the numbers of our assumptions here. I can see, for example, the history of what has been going on with this specific input. And I see that, okay, so I have done this change, when I have done this, and with which assumption. So I also see that recalculation has happened for revenue, and I might be wondering, okay, so what is then the formula here? It's not the black box. I can drill down into the formula. I can see, okay, there is some formula I can read. So if I don't specify revenue explicitly as an input, please then calculate demand plan units multiplied by price per unit. Very simple, right? So so I still have a chance to input revenue just if I want to imply without calculation. So I can read that, I can check this formula, and then I see, okay, there are 3 scenarios. I've been working with scenario 1, but why don't I just go ahead and create a new scenario? So, and of course, this is what everybody is doing right now. Yeah, so impact in some way. I will be looking at how this will be impacting my assumptions. I've copied, made a scenario, it's empty. So let me choose this scenario 1 as the source scenario. I've specified it here already. So the source scenario to copy information from, I copy it to my new scenario, I import that, and then I can see that this is now copied. Of course, now I can, for example, go ahead and do those changes in a number of different places if I really want to work with more input changes and assumptions changes. All right, when I have created this scenario, I might want to say, okay, now, for example, scenario 3, I do not need it anymore. So I specified here, I just run the delete process, and it is not there anymore. So you are absolutely not limited with the amount of scenarios you could add, so you can store them all and delete also those which you would not need and that's not limited by any means. So all right. Okay, so now I have this new scenario. So why don't we just go ahead and, for example, assign this new scenario, because I like it. I see that the financials are there much better, and I'm just looking into this COVID impact scenario, and I see that, come on, I now added this one. I can see that it's all applied to my full portfolio. See which scenario is assigned. All right, so I like this plan and this review. What I still need to do, I still need to approve that, right? So I still need to approve that. And to do that, I will probably then do it a little bit differently than usually Niels was doing, going to the application or the place where his calendar is. I will just open my app on my iPhone. I will find where is the calendar overview. So it will just download this exactly the same page, which was on my computer. What I do need to do, I still need to find this update CapEx project. I just click on approve, right? So I approve, and then I just simply go ahead and refresh this page. So I see this is approved. So I can work with mobile. Of course, you would not work with mobile with a lot of input of data and complex things, but for approvals, that's really a nice way to go. All right, so if we now go back to summarizing what we have seen. So we have seen a number of examples how Anaplan allows you to have finance and supply chain collaborate in a very interactive way with each other. And this is done with one data set, with one platform, but still you can really orchestrate this access. You can say, okay, who has access to which page? And even who has access to which cell. So this is like till the lowest level, which is a result. This would lead to the fact that you can plan for disruptive events, what Niels has been showing, and you can also see the impact immediately, both in supply chain and finance. You can discuss the impact during the meeting, make the changes, and agree on something, on some plan to go ahead. So, and the data model, which is then designed by you with this extensive scenario management capabilities, allows you to create as many what-if scenarios as you would like to create. And of course, we have covered a number of topics which are bringing finance and supply chain together in sync. But if your topic for your company has not been covered, please contact us directly or on LinkedIn. And you can also find our next webinars. Maybe it would be more applicable to you, to your situation. You can find announcements on our LinkedIn. So please follow us on LinkedIn. It's Blue Crooks and Nublix, and of course, Anaplan. Yes. All right. So now you might be thinking, okay, Marina, that was all nice, but actually, what does it take to implement what we've just seen, and maybe even more complicated models on bigger data scales or data sets? And we must admit here that Anaplan is really famous for its implementation method, which is called Anaplan Way. So we go very fast and we go very agile. So you will see the results very fast and can think together with us for the model. So which is behind all these dashboards. And it's fast, iterative, and it's collaborative. And as a result, we build that together. And the knowledge and ownership stays also at your sites, at our client sites, and they then just discover more and more possibilities, which kind of models they can build in Anaplan later themselves. All right, I see now it's time for your questions, and let me see if there are questions popping up. Niels, have you seen any questions?
Yeah, so I see one question on integration. So somebody's asking, how do you connect Anaplan to our ERP data? Now there's a lot of answers to it, so there's multiple options. You can go for a very manual connection where you would upload and download data. So if it wouldn't be to an ERP, but a monthly budget file that you still create in Excel, you could upload that as data in Anaplan. But Anaplan also has a lot of automated options. So one is what they call Anaplan Connect, where we would be able to automatically upload, but also download, so as in share files between your ERP or your data warehouse and Anaplan in a structured way through flat files. There's an opportunity to do it through an ETL or technically through REST APIs. So there's a lot of ways to connect Anaplan to your ERP data, and there's always one that that would be fitting for your situation. I think what's also valuable to explain is that what we typically build when we start building models, so when you would build your S&OP model or your financial models or your demand planning models, is that we always start from what we call the data warehouse. So we build a model where we pull in all of the data, and from that one source of truth, so that one source of data, that's where we would build the models on top of.
Okay, Niels, I see another question just popped up. Hello, thank you for the overview. Who is the contact person for estimating the project? So here, I think the question is about how do we estimate, which process we're going to bring in Anaplan and how long will it take? What is the roadmap? What is the scope, I think? And these kind of questions we can discuss together during one of the first workshops, which we start. This is sort of a scoping workshop. So you can just contact us. We will have a talk and see what your situation is, and we'll discuss next steps. So maybe we'll need to involve like Blue Crooks if it's a combination of supply chain and FP&A. So yeah, or if it's only supply chain. So just contact us and we will help you absolutely. So, and there is another question: what are the other things Anaplan is able to build? I've seen CapEx review being built in Anaplan, but what are the other processes which can be designed? And the answer here is that, well, theoretically, all the processes can be designed in Anaplan, but what we see really very often is, of course, planning and forecasting part, budgeting part. So things, for example, rolling forecasting, financial scenarios, you have seen that as well. Driver best performance analysis, when you do have different drivers which then impact your P&L and you would like to put what if scenarios to see how they impact it. So this is, well, one of the things you would really go to Anaplan to do that. Automating cost allocations will save you a lot of time, I think, and frustration will go away. And then there is also, for example, a link between strategic planning and annual planning. If you want to link long-term and short-term, you can do that. And all types of dashboards and FP&A scorecards. You can do all that in Anaplan. I think that was the last question we have been able to answer here today.
Yeah, I see
or
one.
You see other questions?
Yeah, I see one last question popping up. So somebody's asking, hi, and how far are IT resources / consultancy needed to build models or maintain them? What's the level of self-service possibility? That's a very good question. So that talks a little bit about what Marina already shared, as in we build together. That's what we typically recommend. So with any new project that we would start with a new customer, what you would typically see is that you would need consultants to come in and to help you understand what type of functionality do you need to help you build those first models. But what we always go for is a situation where we also have your model build or your people being trained as model builders. So typically a customer assigns 1 or 2 people from the team, the business team, so it might be a supply chain team or a finance team, to become certified model builders. And then together we would build those first models. But we always strive for you to become self-sufficient at some point. Of course, if you would want to build new models, new, let's say, complicated models, we as a consultancy partner would come in, but the idea is really that you become self-sufficient. And I think that's also one of the strengths of Anaplan, is that it's typically the business with some support from IT, but in most cases the business that can really run and drive new Anaplan models.
Okay. So for all other questions, we will be tackling them then offline. Thank you very much for participating. And hopefully see you on our LinkedIn page and see you during our next webinars. And please contact us directly if you have questions or you would like to schedule a talk. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.